What is going on, MMA fans and full-time family? It is time to break down tonight's fight card. UFC Auckland going down. Main event, of course, between Paul Felder and Dan Hooker. And then we've got Jim the Brute Crute taking on Michael Oleksiejczuk. I'm sure I didn't say that right in the co-main event. Tonight's fights are going to start a little bit early because we're over in Auckland. They're going to be going down at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. So there's some good fights on the card, though, man. The card is themed more for the Australian fan base, of course. That's where the locale is for this fight. But there's some good fights throughout the entire card, actually, even on the prelims. So I'll definitely be tuning in tonight. Let's get to the breakdown of the main card. First fight of the night we've got between Brad Ridell and Magomed Mustafaev. In this fight, I'm definitely going to be taking Magomed Mustafaev. Brad Ridell, if you break down his honestly, his entire fight career, he really hasn't fought anybody that you would deem UFC caliber. He's only fought one guy in the UFC, and that guy was making his UFC debut after, he had been fighting cans before that, so he wasn't even UFC caliber. So Brad Riddell he's a local guy. I believe he's fighting out of City Kickboxing, but this is gonna be a tough fight. He's City Kickboxing is where Dan Hooker and Israel Adesanya, I believe, where they train as well. So he's got some, one of the better training camps over there, one of the best. You could honestly start to say they're one of the best fight teams in the world, especially considering Australian MMA, or because I mean, Dan Hooker, who we're going to talk about in the main event, and Israel Adesanya are fucking both just killers. Killers. The killers, mate. I'm serious. We're going to talk about Dan Hooker. I was trying to get myself to pick Paul Felder to win this fight, because in my head, Dan Hooker should win, but I'm already getting into I'm so excited for the main event. I'm already starting to break that down. So let's get back into Mustafaev. I'm taking Mustafaev to win the fight. As I said, Brad Riddell never fought anybody UFC caliber, and Mustafaev He's 3-1 in the UFC. His only losses to Kevin Lee, who's a top contender. Got a win over Joe Proctor. His last win came April of 2019, spinning back fist, and he followed it up with some punches over an undefeated guy that was 6-0. But he's been in there with guys like Kevin Lee. Before the UFC, he actually fought Abu Bakar Nurmagomedov. So he's gonna have a little bit of decent grappling. He's just more UFC caliber than Brad Riddell in this fight. I'm sure Brad Riddell's gonna continue to get better, but I'm taking Mustafaev in this fight. Moving on, we got Ben Sassoli, the Combat Wombat, versus Marcos Rogerio de Lima. This fight, I'm going to be taking Marcos Rogerio de Lima, sort of similar to the last fight. Ben Sassoli, he's only got one fight in the UFC, and it was against Greg Hardy. Everyone knows Greg Hardy at this point. I mean, the fight ended in a no contest, but before that, Ben Sassoli had actually fought to a no contest on the Contender Series, which was an accidental eye gouge. So he got a shot in the UFC after a no contest on the Contender Series. That pretty much lets you know he was picked to lose to Greg Hardy. Um, but it ended in a no contest because Greg Hardy's still new to the sport. So this guy really just hasn't proven at all his UFC caliber. He's definitely got some wins by KO, TKO on the regional scene before entering the UFC, but that's really, I believe, all Marcos Rogerio has to worry about is, that puncher's chance. Marcos Rogerio actually has a legit record of 16-6-1. He's also got legit UFC experience. He's got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 fights in the UFC, where I believe he's like 5-4. And he's fought guys like Stefan Struve, Ovin St. Preux, Gazimurad Antigulov. The guys he lost to are some of the better light heavyweights, or heavyweights even in Stefan Struve's case, that we've seen in the UFC. And also, Rogerio is going to have a grappling edge in this fight, so I'm definitely going to be leaning toward De Lima to win this fight. Moving on, we've got the ladies. I was shocked to see the odds on this fight. Xionin Yan is going to be taking on Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who's like a 3-1 underdog, which is kind of fucking crazy to me. I get it, she was on the end of the most brutal one-punch women's knockout we've ever seen when she fought Jessica Andrade, and that could have, scrambled her eggs a little bit. But she's lost 2 fights after that, but I think she's going to eventually get her bearings back. Motherfuckers have gotten knocked out by Francis Ngannou and came back to get, you know what I'm saying? So it's not like she's permanently scarred from that Jessica Andrade fight. I'm talking about Karolina Kowalkiewicz, of course. And she's got legit experience in rounds with the best female fighters on the fucking planet. Win over Rose Namajunas, went rounds, rocked Joanna at one point. She's got, just her resume is fucking insane. She's currently on a 3-fight losing streak. She lost to Alexa Grasso, Michelle Waterson. Those are good fighters. She's got a win over Felice Herrig, win over Jodie Esquibel. She's fought Claudia Gadelha. This girl has a good 10 fights in the UFC. Yan Xiaonan is undefeated in the UFC at 4-0, but she beat Caitlin Curran, Vivian Pereira, Yuri Kondo, Angela Hill. Those are all, top 10, top 15 fighters. Not even top. Angela Hill has cracked the top 15, but she was cut from the UFC and then had to go to Invicta and then got re-signed. Like, Angela Hill is the best name on her resume, and Angela Hill hasn't really cracked the top 15. None of these other girls really cracked the top 15. I think Angela Hill sniffed number 15 spot for like a week, and then she lost it to like Mackenzie Dern after Mackenzie Dern lost or something. So there's levels to this shit, and Karolina Kowalkiewicz has literally just fought way higher competition throughout her damn near entire career. So I'm definitely taking Karolina to win this fight and get back on that winning train. But that's interesting odds to me. I got my girl KK in this fight. Moving on, man, these next 2 fights were by far the hardest for me to pick. They're both damn near toss-ups. I really like Jim the Crute Brute. I like Paul Felder. They're both really good fighters. They can both win on any given Sunday or Saturday in this case. Dan Hooker, I want to talk about that fight so bad. Let's talk about this co-main event. Dan Hooker is a fucking killer, you guys. Paul Felder, he's a beast too, but Dan Hooker's a fucking killer. I want to see Dan Hooker versus Justin Gaethje. I want to see Paul Felder versus Donald Cerrone. We got the lightweight division, man. It's always been stacked, but there's some fucking fights, boy. Kevin Lee coming back up. Hey, we got some fights in that lightweight division, man. Alright, Jim the Crute Brute versus Michael Oleksiejczuk. I'm taking Michael Oleksiejczuk, but like I said, man, you could flip a coin, call heads, and, whoever, this is a coin flip for me. I'm going to go with the Michael Oleksiejczuk side of the coin in this fight, but it was tough for me. Michael Oleksiejczuk definitely has fought higher level competition throughout his UFC career so far, but that's not really enough in this fight because he's only went 1 round with the guys that he beat. So even though he's fought guys that are probably a little more recognizable, like Gian Villante, Gazimad Antigulov, who's 20-5 when they fought, he only went 44 seconds with the guy. So you really don't have enough to judge him off of, because this is the story of Michael's UFC career so far. He went from fighting guys that were not very good on the regional scene. Before he joined the UFC, he fought a guy that was 31-33, so he had a literally 50-50 record, but it was a losing record. And then he fought a guy that was 5-0. So, he was on the regional scene. Then when he came to the UFC, he fought to a no contest with Khalil Roundtree. Then he knocked out Gian Villante and Gazimad Antigulov in the first round. So there wasn't much there. Then he got choked out by the Von Flue choke to OSP. So he hasn't really proven a lot. But Jimmy Crute, he's a little bit smaller in this fight. He's only beat Paul Craig and Sam Alvey, which Sam Alvey is a good fighter. But still, he was a guy that fought at 185. He's a little older. It's really not even that fight, it's not really a lot you don't get to show a lot as far as can you beat guys that have been ranked in the top 15 or whatever. So this is really a toss-up for me. This is one of those ones where you got to go back, watch their fights, break down their styles, and I really just didn't have that time for this fight. Just going off their resumes and their strength of schedule and where they're at in their careers, this is a toss-up. I'm going to go with Michael, but like I said, man, for me, like this is how I was, it's either Hooker and Michael win or Crute and Felder. Like, I don't know, it's both of these are toss-ups, but I just feel like I'm either gonna get both right or I'm gonna get them both wrong. All right, so I'm taking Michael in the co-main event. Jim Crute, he fought Sam Alvey, Paul Craig. Paul Craig really hasn't shown a lot in the UFC. Definitely had some memorable moments, last-second submissions, etc. Paul Craig also, though, he got a first-round knockout on the Contender Series, which is impressive. Before that, he was fighting guys with decent records. He fought a guy that was 10-2. He fought a guy that was 9-4. He fought a guy that was 7-3 on the Contender Series. Those are winning records. Those are up and coming fighters on the regional scene. He wasn't just fighting guys to rack up wins. He was actually testing himself. He fought Ben Kelleher when he was only 4-0, who's got an MMA family. I really like fucking Jim Crute here, man. Oh, I hate when I feel like I'm picking the wrong guy. You guys, we might be doing what we did in the last video and switching up a pick. I really like Jim Crute in this fight, but how it's pretty rare to go somewhere and both the hometown guys win. You know what I'm saying? Like, I like Crute and I like Hooker, but I just feel like that's kind of rare. Knowing how these fucking judges have no clue what the fuck they're doing. You know what I'm saying? Um, I'm just gonna I'm just gonna stick with Michael and fucking talk about this main event I've been waiting to talk about. But it's a toss up, man. So Paul Felder versus Dan Hooker. Dan fucking Hooker, man. He's just been so impressive since his loss to Jason Knight. I mean, Jason Knight, I was a fan of him before he went. He's an entertaining fighter. He just couldn't get it together to get off of his losing streak before he left the UFC. He went on that 4-fight losing streak, had to go to bare knuckle fighting. But Jason Knight was actually a pretty decent fighter. But after seeing him go on that 4-fight losing streak, it kind of makes you go, okay, maybe he's not as good as he should be. Even though he's got some solid jiu-jitsu, maybe he just don't have the fucking MMA IQ to be a professional fighter. So seeing Dan Hooker lose to guys like Jason Knight and Yair Rodriguez, who, I mean, he's grown, but Yair Rodriguez definitely wasn't anything special before he fought Frankie Edgar. So to see Dan Hooker lost to Yair and Jason Knight earlier in his career makes you a little skeptical. But what he's done since then, knocked out Ross Pearson, choked out Mark Chikasi, knocked out Jim Miller, knocked out Gilbert Burns, had the war with Edson Barboza, knocked out James Vick, fucking decision win over Ally Aquinta, who's a fucking beast. What? This man is on a fucking tear. Knocked out Ross Pearson, choked out Mark Chikasi, knocked out Jim Miller, knocked out motherfucking Doreen Ho Gilbert Burns, a war with Edson Barboza, knocked out James Vick, decision over Iaquinta unanimous. Oh my. That is fucking impressive. This dude is on the way to a big fight. I mean, he's got the fucking highlight reel. He's got everything you need to market a big fight. He could easily fight fucking Justin Gaethje on a huge card. He could easily fight Tony fucking Ferguson after he loses to Khabib. You know what I'm saying? He could easily fight any of these guys, and it'd be just what he's been able to do in his last 7 fights is extremely impressive. That's that momentum. He's building some legit momentum on top of having, Auckland and Australia and New Zealand, on top of having that market base, that fan base behind him. That's only a bonus. He's actually fucking got 5 out of 6 finishes in his last 6 wins. 5 of them are finishes, and they've all been against legit competition. That's what's so fucking impressive. Paul Felder is extremely, he's got a really high MMA IQ, really high fight IQ. He's been in there with some of the best of the best. All the guys that you kind of consider as the gatekeepers and journeymen to the best, the best lightweights in the world, but the guys that really aren't fighting for the title, the Edson Barbosas, the James Vicks, the Charles Oliveira's, these guys are definitely top 15, top 10 fighters, top 10 ranked lightweights in the world, but they're not the top 5 guys, right? So Felder's been having some impressive fights. Of course, the split decision with Barboza. Some people thought Barboza won that, but hey, that was a war. It was a good fight. James Vick, he wasn't able to knock out James Vick. That's what kind of holds me back a little bit. I mean, some of you guys know what I'm talking about. James Vick chin, man, is definitely something that has been tested and you can question at this point. And so, really, at this point, if you're someone that don't knock out James Vick, you kind of got to wonder where you fit into the best of the best, because I kind of feel like any of the top 10 lightweights, damn near any of the top 5, can probably knock out James Vick at this point. I mean, he moved up to welterweight. That really didn't help. But hey, man, that's just, just keeping it real. He lost a split decision to Mike Perry, but he broke his arm in that fight. But still, losing a split decision to Mike Perry is a lot different than all the impressive streak that Dan Hooker is on. It's just a lot different, So he's got a few things that just make you pull back, and go. Ugh. I like Paul Felder. He's a really good fighter. He finished Charles Oliveira. He finished Stevie Ray. Those are good fighters. He just doesn't have the momentum of Dan Hooker by any means right now. But that doesn't mean he can't win this fight. That doesn't mean they can't fight to a decision. That doesn't mean the judges won't give it to Paul Felder even though they're in Auckland. That doesn't mean he can't submit or ground and pound Dan Hooker. That's one of the real scenarios I see. Paul Felder has he had at one point he had 3 ground and pound finishes in a row over Alex Ricci, Stevie Ray, Charles Oliveira. He had won all of those fights by ground and pound. So he's definitely got a good ground and pound game. Dan Hooker hasn't been fighting guys that's not their strategy. He fought Edson Barboza, Iaquinta, James Vick. Those guys aren't really looking to take you down and ground and pound you. That could be something Paul Felder gets back to in this fight. I really could see Paul Felder winning this fight via ground and pound. Very real possibility. But with the momentum, it's hard to pick against Dan Hooker at home in the main event. It's real hard. I mean, I would probably, if I was putting money on this, I wouldn't even put money on this fight. If I did, I'd put a small amount on Paul Felder. But this is another coin flip. I'm going to pick Dan Hooker, man, but I wouldn't be surprised if we get a Paul Felder ground and pound fucking finish in this fight. I would not be surprised, man. Looking forward to watching these fights. I'm so fucking excited for the main event. Great fight. Can't wait for these fights tonight, man. With that being said, it is what it is. Let the full-time family know who you are picking in the comments. I am out. Oh, P.S. By the way, check out some of these fights on the prelims. You got Jalen Turner fighting on the prelims. Jake Matthews versus Emil Meck. That's a good fight. Callan Potter versus Song Kanan. That's a good fight. Kai Kara France versus Tyson Nam. That's a good fight. Angela Hill's on the card. Maki Patolo versus Takashi Sato. I like that fight. Priscilla Cachoeira versus Shayna Dobson. I mean, both of those girls are UFC caliber fighters in a sense. Can they fight for the title? No, but they definitely can fight in that top 15. They're fighters. That's a fight I'm a little bit interested in. I know you got to be a little bit of a hardcore to be interested in that fight, but I'm telling you, this card is kind of stacked if you are a hardcore. So with that being said, man, and when I say I'm not gonna get into that, let the full-time family know what you think in the comments. I'm out.